The American operation in Iran marks another turn in the Trump administration's involvement in global politics. And joining us now to analyze this operation and how it all went down is U.S. constitutional law expert and historian Joshua Kastenberg. Josh, great to see you again.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
So, when the U.S. president decides to enact an operation like this, what exactly does the process look like?
Well, the process increasingly has gone further and further away from what the United States Constitution envisioned, which was that Congress would declare war. You know, customarily, what we've seen since World War II is either a United Nations declaration, like with the Korean War, or that Congress actually empowers the president to do something, like in the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, or the authorization for the use of military force preceding the United States and allied invasion into Afghanistan and Iraq in our own lifetimes. But it doesn't seem like in this particular case, there's even been that much communication between the whole Congress and the president. And the president has just decided to go it alone.
Now, Trump isn't the first president, Josh, to push the boundaries of the War Powers Resolution. Presidents ever since 1973 or in the 70s when it came into effect have been doing this. Are there any legal liabilities? And if not, are these just rules then that will continue to be broken?
Well, there's a robust debate over whether the War Powers Act was constitutional in the first place, and some presidents have skirted that or claim they've met it in spirit, but it seems like this one is pushing it even further than Obama or Biden or George W. Bush did. So, are there any liabilities? Only political liability if the people of the United States decide that this is unsatisfactory or unconstitutional. But I don't expect anything to happen from the Congress. In fact, the majority in the Congress, and this includes some Democrats, but almost all Republicans, are making this into a policy debate and ignoring the constitutional constraints on the presidency. And so, you couple that with the Supreme Court's ruling some 18 months ago on Trump versus United States, and it's an open question. What can stop the president? If Congress doesn't, if the courts can't, then where does it fall?
Well, looking ahead here, Josh, what do you think needs to happen for Trump to actually officially enact wartime presidential powers? And could that impact midterms at all?
Absolutely. Look, we know from honest media reporting that there have been meetings between members of the administration, particularly White House staff, and what we call election deniers. There have been ideas floated to nationalize the elections contrary to the plain language of the Constitution. And that's been thrown out there. Given the conduct of the administration in pushing the boundaries of the use of the United States military, particularly the federalized National Guard, which is the Army, in Los Angeles, in Chicago, and in Portland, Oregon, I could see the administration trying to influence the midterm elections through the use of the military or the threat of the use of force. It's already out there. The Constitution is, and this is something that Justice Gorsuch and Chief Justice Roberts has said, and Rehnquist and others before them, the United States Constitution is only as sound as the elected leaders make it, and the people are willing to tolerate their decisions. And so we're kind of at a standstill because it doesn't seem like there's a popular move to push the president away from, at this point, away from war with Iran. And make no mistake about it, we are at war with Iran without a declaration. The Iranian government certainly thinks so. And my understanding is they're firing back at allies. And they're also telling Trump, we're not interested in a ceasefire with you right now. At least that's their public stance. So that's a war. And will the president then say there's an emergency at home? Well, we'll see. But we know the rhetoric is out there.
Now, Josh, you were actually deployed to Iraq twice and oversaw the military's compliance with international law. In your personal as well as professional experience, do you see any differences or similarities between this conflict that we're seeing now in Iran and the one in Iraq over 20 years ago?
Absolutely. And it has to do with the attitude of the leaders. 20 years ago, you had an administration under George W. Bush and with people such as, Attorney General Alberto Gonzales, who would say, well, the Geneva Conventions don't apply to this kind of irregular conflict because we're dealing with terrorists and they're not a part of nation states, but we will comply with the spirit of those Geneva Conventions and other international law constructs. And to their credit, they fought out matters like that in the courts when they had to. Sometimes they won and sometimes they lost. But the attitude of the leadership of the Pentagon, for example, today is that those international law constraints don't exist. We're not required to follow them, and we're not going to, and they simply don't exist. Not even to the point like what you had under George Bush's administration, where they would say they don't technically apply, but we'll apply them where we can. Now it's just we're not interested in applying them at all.
This all raises a lot of questions, and the Constitution is definitely being tested. Josh, thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
That is constitutional law expert and historian Joshua Kastenberg.